So apparently the world was supposed to end again. If you were on TikTok a few weeks ago, you probably saw the surge of people insisting that the rapture was coming.
Literally about to crash out. I've been on Rapture talk. If the rapture is gonna happen in a few days, but they say it's gonna happen, that means I only have a few days left with my kids.
We are literally about to go home, and there is so much work to be done. The harvest is so plenty.
Please accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and as your Savior. Please repent for your sins.
Some were crying, some were preaching, some were warning people, some were doing very emotional sign-offs to their followers before they ascend into heaven.
I strongly urge you to write a rapture letter. A letter to those that will probably be left behind, explaining to them what's going to happen, where you went, some of the lies they will probably tell the people who are left behind, briefing them and teaching them how to come to salvation.
It all started with a viral prophecy from a South African pastor who claimed that Jesus had revealed the rapture date to him, which was September 23rd to 24th, as the day that all believers would be sent to heaven. I'm not sure why 23rd and 24th. I thought if you were being raptured, it would be pretty immediate, but I'm not really that familiar with rapture mechanics. He talked about it in podcasts and sermons, and within days, clips of his predictions spread all across TikTok. I did wonder what time zone the rapture would be in, but the American Christians on TikTok obviously presumed that Jesus, even though he was a Middle Eastern man, would operate the rapture in US time zones, obviously. And that's when Rapture Talk was born. People started posting countdowns, sharing dreams, saying their kids were having rapture dreams, repenting, warning their friends and family that this was it and they were going to be left behind and tortured for eternity if they didn't find salvation. I don't know.
I am so...
See, this is where I'm confused, because is the baby not coming? Is the baby not invited to the rapture? Won't you have... aren't they coming with? It was kind of like watching someone have like a very public meltdown on a train, but instead it was masses of people very publicly having a break with reality on the internet. And I swear I couldn't tell which videos were satire and which were real. There's a shocking amount of overlap. Some were obviously making fun of the hysteria, but others were so genuine it kind of became indistinguishable. And that's kind of where we're at in the world now. Irony and delusion tend to share the same filters and texts and audios online. One thing I very much agree with these people on is that yes, we are currently in the bad place. Some people were praying. Again, a lot of people were just like warning others, which is, when you think about it, if you genuinely believed that you were going to be raptured, you were going to ascend to heaven, and everyone else was gonna be facing an eternity of torment and torture, if you were a halfway decent person, you would also be frantically trying to warn everyone. So I really can't fault them for that. Others, though, were making very smug videos preemptively saying, "I told you so," to everyone who was going to get left behind. A few people were preparing like it was a legitimate event. People were selling their belongings. People sold their cars. I think one lady sold her house or gave it away.
Guys, I'm saying goodbye to my car. I've had it for 5 years. They're taking it. Oh, this is my baby, man. This has been my baby for years. 5 years. But she's gotta go. I won't need her beyond September, because I'm going home to where my Father in heaven is.
I don't even know what to do at this point. I gave my house away. I gave away my savings. I gave away everything because the rapture was supposed to happen. All I have is literally this trash bag that is everything I own.
They're quitting their jobs, they're live streaming just in case they ascended mid-video. The rapture was trending like a Marvel premiere. Before we start though, I do want to make it clear I'm not making this video to bash Christians or anyone of faith. This video is really just about looking at one specific online trend and the way that social media can really amplify beliefs and delusions to quite an extreme level. Even very well-meaning people can and do get swept up in that, and it's not even really specific to religion. This happens every day. So where on earth did this come from this time? Because again, this has happened so many times. There's been so many rapture dates that have come and gone. They're always scheduled to happen, they never do. It's like Brisbane's public transport. Here's one thing that I've looked into that I don't think anyone on Rapture Talk seems to know. The version of the rapture that everyone's panicking about doesn't even exist in the Bible, like at all. It's never talked about. The actual concept of believers vanishing into the sky, leaving their clothes and belongings behind, airplanes crashing, chaos on Earth, like this cinematic, dramatic, blockbuster version of this is really quite a modern invention. Like, it's really new. It came from a 19th century preacher or grifter, depending on who you're talking to, named John Nelson Darby. Darby was a British minister in the Plymouth Brethren movement, and he created a system called this word that ladies, queens, I don't know how to say it. Dispensationalism. Basically, he divided history into two different eras of God's master plan. And in one of those eras, Jesus would return twice. Once secretly to take believers away before the apocalypse, and once publicly later for final judgment. The secret rapture idea didn't exist before him. Early Christians never talked about it that way. Again, it's not in the Bible. Not in the original Bible. Again, it's been added into some, I think, but that is extremely new. This was essentially Darby's way of reorganizing prophecy to make it a lot more cinematic, more black and white. The believers escape, the non-believers suffer. The usual. He was a charismatic person, well-traveled, honestly a bit of like a religious salesman. He toured North America preaching this new version of the end times, and people loved it. It was dramatic, it was emotional, and it promised certainty in an uncertain world. And just like that, Darby's 1800s fan fiction became one of the most influential doctrines in modern Christianity. So it's pretty wild. Like, people in 2025 are panicking over something, panicking over an event that is newer than the telephone. So this TikTok apocalypse wasn't just about like one prophecy. It's the same idea that has been rebranded and resold for 2 centuries, this time with hashtags and trending audio. Now, the whole Rapture Talk 2025 is extremely easy to laugh at, and we all know that. And honestly, parts of it were hilarious and just absurd. People were worried that they wouldn't ascend because if they were inside sleeping, then they would just hit their ceilings. Like the all-powerful, all-knowing creator of the universe was going to ascend you into the clouds of heaven, but he forgot about the plasterboard. It is absurd, but again, pretty deeply on brand for this crowd. And to be fair, we do have to point out, you don't usually get this brand of religious psychosis and hysteria unless people are already exhausted and anxious and desperate for something to make some sense, desperate for some kind of relief. If you're living in a world that feels increasingly hopeless, where everything's expensive, chaotic, and meaningless, the idea of an escape, even a supernatural one, even one that results in your friends and family all being tortured for an eternity, does become comforting. Can I relate directly? Girl, no. But if I'm trying to be fair, I can see how some people may arrive at this conclusion. For some people, the rapture isn't necessarily about punishment or judgment. It's as simple as finally being free of this existence. It's a very interesting form of like groupthink. And to be fair, most people don't fall into groupthink because they're dumb. I think that's a really overly simplistic way of looking at it. Oftentimes, people fall into it because they're lonely or they don't feel like they belong anywhere. We need to remember that humans, first and foremost, are wired for community. So you can really boil down a lot of human behavior and explain a lot of human decision making to that one need. It's not always logical. Obviously, it's not always logical, but humans are wired for connection ultimately. We want to belong to something, to feel understood, to feel seen, to feel heard, and to be around people who see the world the way that we do. And when real community disappears, when you don't have that in your day-to-day life, you start looking for it online, even if it's through fear or prophecy or shared delusion. It's more about belonging than belief a lot of the time. The rapture, the conspiracy of it all, the algorithm, they all tap into the same need to feel part of something bigger and to not feel alone in the chaos. So if you've wrapped up your whole identity in a religion or in a group, an ideology, and then all of those people start talking about the rapture and how we're going home to heaven and we're going to be saved and this and that, you can sort of see how that would be intoxicating to some people. And it's a very hard thing to wake someone up out of that. And that need for connection, that drive for connection, doesn't just show up in big belief systems, it shows up in every single one of our relationships as well. We all want to feel understood, but communication takes practice. And it's super, super easy to lose that when life gets stressful or busy. And that is exactly what the Paired app is designed to help with, who is the sponsor of this video, building small, consistent habits that keep couples feeling connected every single day. Paired is literally designed to help couples communicate better and understand each other better. I've used it, and honestly, it's one of those apps that make you realize how easy it is to forget to check check in with someone when your life gets busy or a bit hectic, and it also highlights why it's so important to do. You open the app, there's a quick daily quiz or a prompt like, what's one small thing your partner did this week that made you smile? You both answer privately, and then you get to see each other's answer, and it sparks these conversations that you otherwise definitely would not have had. It's like having a little secretary for your relationship to be like, hey, have we thought of this? Have we talked about this? I also love that you answer the same question. You don't see each other's answer and then you talk about it, which is something you kind of can't mimic in regular interaction. Like, someone's always going to speak first, but with this you can see where each other is at in a way that's really honest and without being influenced by what the other person said. It's also created by relationship experts, which I really appreciate, and the questions aren't random. They actually intentionally help you unpack stuff like communication and trust and sharing the mental load. There are over 1,000 quizzes and guided journeys within the app, and it's super easy to integrate into your daily routine. Even if you're both busy, even if you're both working full time, it really doesn't take that long. I also really like this part. You can add like relationship goals, for example, if you want to like commit to a weekly date night or something like that, or remember to check in about certain issues you might be working on. You can add that into the app. You can also choose to hide or include certain topics so you can really tailor it to your relationship. And you can also set your anniversaries as a reminder, because if you're anything like me and you're not good at remembering dates, this really does come in handy. And 89% of couples that use the Paired app notice positive changes in their relationship within just 3 months. So if you want something small that makes a big difference, it's definitely worth trying. And right now you can get 25% off an annual subscription using my special link so they know I sent you. You just download the Paired app, you claim the offer and get started, and it's that easy. Because honestly, if you can spend like an hour a day scrolling Rapture talk, you can spend 5 minutes connecting with the person that you care about. Again, use my link below so that they know I sent you, and thanks again to Paired for sponsoring this video. So here's where all of it gets like pretty fascinating and sort of sciencey. Our brains are literally wired for belief to a certain extent. There's a specific part of the brain that lights up during religious or transcendent experiences. Scientists found that when this area is stimulated, whether through meditation or prayer or even electrical pulses, people often report feeling a divine presence, and that's where we think belief lives. It probably evolved that way for a reason. Shared belief helped early humans bond. It helped us like make sense of the world around us, give us peace, form tribes, and ultimately survive, which is the kind of the point of any biological process. It gave chaos a story and something we can make sense of, and it gave suffering a purpose. Again, we're social animals. Belief in all forms is kind of what keeps us together. Again, not necessarily religious, not necessarily in the way that it looks now, but as a whole. Now fast forward to 2025, we've taken that evolutionary wiring and we have plugged it into a social media algorithm. Algorithms that thrive on emotional contagion. So that's a really cool thing that we've done. TikTok is essentially like a digital revival for this kind of stuff. The algorithm as a preacher, the comment section as a congregation, your For You page as the pulpit. I don't know how far we can go with that analogy. And before I continue, a big thank you to all of my upper tier patrons. These guys keep the channel going. I couldn't do it without you. If you want to join, there's bonus content over there. I've just started uploading little like mini deep dives, like mini commentary videos on topics that I find interesting. I uploaded one about how the nuclear family was artificially created for factories and capitalism. If that interests you. There's tiers for as low as $3 a month, and depending on what tier you choose, you get your name listed in videos, you get access to the bonus content. You can also get up to 20% off my clothing brand Rift. We've got a bunch of cool stuff over there. If any of that interests you and you want to support the channel and do me a favor, then I will be your biggest fan, and thank you again to all of my patrons. But when you combine our ancient wiring for belief with modern dopamine loops that aren't like supernatural, I don't think our biology ever predicted TikTok. That's where you get mass hysteria, whether it's religious or conspiratorial or otherwise. We already had mass hysteria before this, so you can only imagine. Well, we don't have to, it's here. And again, it's not necessarily stupidity. I think that's a really simple way of looking at it. Although I would personally argue that a lot of these people are probably deeply gullible, but ultimately it's biology. Our brains crave belonging far more than we crave truth, and often we crave belonging at the expense of truth. We see it every day with every demographic of people. Now here's something I do want to say that might piss a few people off. A lot of Christian teaching, at least in the way that it is preached online, reads a lot like an abusive relationship. Not all of the believers themselves, but the framework of it is very it's the extremely like fickle conditional love of it all. Believe in me or burn forever. Obey me or you'll suffer for eternity. If you don't say you love me and believe in me, then I'm gonna make sure you're tortured for the rest of time. You know, that's not love. at all, that's control. It's a very similar dynamic to coercive relationships. Love bombing laced with deep-seated guilt, reward followed by punishment, eternal security, but only if you comply. Now, obviously not saying all religion is bad. For some people, it's a big source of comfort and hope and community, which is a huge one. It's a place where a lot of people, that's their only community. And without that, their lives would be a lot worse. But when the structure of that faith depends on fear and guilt, eternal torment, eternal shame, eternal obligation, it starts to look a lot less like love and a lot more like control. And most importantly, when you mix that dynamic with social media, what you get is like religious and emotional manipulation on a very large scale, which is what we've seen with this rapture thing. Also, fear becomes engagement, and algorithms love engagement. It is literally a perfect storm, which is why we've seen this grow legs in the way that it did. And again, maybe this isn't even about faith. Maybe it's just about how unbearable life has become for a lot of people. When everything feels broken, when, you know, everything's out of your reach, everything's unaffordable, everyone's scraping to get by, everyone's stressed out, we're removed from our environment naturally. The news is exhausting, the loneliness is constant and structural. When all of that's happening, the promise of escape, any form of escape, becomes intoxicating. So for some people, I'm sure the rapture wasn't just about punishing non-believers. I'm sure it was about escape. It's easy to mock it, and I have, but I do think some people in this group were just desperate for some form of closure. Believing that the end is near gives all of this chaos around us some kind of shape, like a vessel to exist in that makes sense. It makes all of the suffering feel like it's leading somewhere, and it's not just happening for no reason. And faith has always given people structure and a way to process fear, and social media gives that fear an amplifier, a megaphone. And in an economy built on attention, even prophecy becomes content. So when people feel powerless, even belief can feel like some form of control. And when you feel invisible and overlooked, being part of a movement, even a delusional one, feels like you're being seen. So maybe the rapture wasn't entirely about theology. And again, it's not really about theology at all, because this isn't in the Bible. It's not actually part of Christian doctrine officially, but maybe it is just about wanting a conclusion, wanting out, wanting some semblance of control, which is an uncomfortable truth that I think we should address. Do I think everyone participating in this like mass hysteria, mass delusion was motivated by feeling lonely and lost? No, not necessarily. I do think some portion of them were just assholes who want to be right, but I do think it's a contributing factor, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention it. So of course the date came and went, no one floated through the ceiling, no planes fell, but the belief didn't necessarily disappear, it kind of just evolved. Some creators uploaded apologies, some people were sort of okay with accepting that they may have been duped.
I wanted to apologize. Obviously it's the 25th, the morning of the 25th, and I'm still here. The rapture didn't happen. It not happening has really gotten me thinking. It's got me thinking outside the box, outside of what my church has told me. That maybe, like, we've got it wrong. Like, maybe modern Christianity doesn't have it quite what Jesus actually meant.
You know, I think at this point it's safe to say that the rapture isn't going to happen. And I've been really struggling to make this video. Like, to have to come on here and admit that I was wrong.
I was wrong about the rapture, which last time I checked is not a sin. Sometimes it's good to be wrong. Sometimes it's good to be humbled, and I'm very humble now.
Others said they misunderstood the signs. A few still insisted that the rapture had happened spiritually, or said that the rapture was actually happening at a different date, which is the old classic. Jesus was busy that day and he postponed. His car wouldn't start in the driveway, couldn't get around to it. And that's what I believe psychologists like to call cognitive dissonance reduction. When reality and your beliefs collide, your brain will bend reality before admitting that your belief was wrong, especially when you're like so heavily tied up in it with your identity, because admitting you were wrong threatens your sense of identity and your purpose and your community. So instead, the story gets reinterpreted, the prophecy gets updated, the timeline moves, the narrative survives. It is fascinating, really. The more wrong a prophecy gets, the more creative the explanations become. We see this a lot with people in cults or people in political fan clubs or conspiracy theorists just weaving batshit insane narratives when they're proven wrong.
Now, y'all are probably expecting me to come on here and apologize because it didn't happen. That's exactly what I'm not gonna do. Y'all are looking at these dates as failed dates. As watchmen, y'all are looking at us like we are failing these dates, like we are wrong or whatnot. But these are invitations to get on the ark, y'all. Consider this God's grace. Consider it God's grace that the rapture didn't happen when we all expected it to.
So the rapture didn't happen. Will it happen tomorrow? Will it happen at the next prescribed date? Who knows? The point is, people will believe almost anything if they feel seen and chosen and heard and part of like a special group. And that's also what the algorithm happens to favor and knows better than any preacher. But hysteria doesn't need a payoff, it just needs attention. Anyway, I survived the rapture. I'm assuming you survived the rapture. Let me know in the comments what you think about all of this. There's a lot to take in. There's definitely a lot to take in. I love hearing your takes. I love, literally when I upload a video, I love sitting there and just seeing all of your takes come through. I also love that I have an audience where not everyone just blindly agrees on everything. Without fail, when I upload a video, there is always a take or a perspective that I'm reading in the comments that I didn't even consider. So I really want to hear what you guys think about all of this rapture talk business. But I hope you enjoyed that. Make your bed, eat your veggies, and I will see you in the next one.